All right, so I'm excited because today we are going to be talking about what to do when you have a failed product, failed launch, failed whatever, but you're trying to figure out how to get on the other side of eventually having one of these fantastic exits that people talk about. And so I'm excited because I've seen this person throughout his entire journey. Well, not the entire journey, but a big chunk of the journey along the way. I'm excited to bring on Reggie Young. So, Reggie, thank you for joining us on the
Yes,
Maximizing E-commerce podcast.
yes, thank you for having me. Excited to be on, especially after having known you for I don't know, at least 4 years now when we first got on a call. So it's exciting to be on the other side of this.
Yeah, it was a while back, and so for those who we'll get into your story in your background here in a minute, but like you literally at one point, this isn't necessarily about e-commerce, but you had your finger on the ability to start Armageddon, right? Like
Uh, yeah,
you had the button that could have started the end of the world, which I'm only saying that just to tease people to like, what are they going to talk about? So we'll talk about your background here in just a minute because that's not an exaggeration of what I just said. So on that note, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this business.
awesome. Yeah. So my name's Reggie Young. I was born and raised in Hawaii, and I joined the military when I was 18 years old. I started off a few years as a medic, and then after a few years, my bosses thought I would be a good officer, so they sent me to the Air Force Academy, where I got my degree in business management. And after graduating the academy in
Wait, they have a
2015,
business management degree at the Air Force Academy?
yeah, they do. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's
Well, I
actually
guess
their
there
most
is
popular.
business that's being done in the Air Force. It's just
Yeah, yeah. It is their most popular major. And to be honest, like it's where I discovered my passion for business. And then I would say like where I discovered my obsession for entrepreneurship was soon after the academy. So I originally wanted to do the most business related job in the Air Force, which was to become an acquisitions officer. It's like high level program management for big programs that happen for procurement in the military. And when I was unfortunately not able to do that job, I was chosen to be a nuclear missiles officer. And what that entailed was being underground for close to half the time out of the month. Underground, no light, you're cut off basically from most of the world. And when I reached that point in my life, I was like, okay, I'm happy to be serving my country. I'm an officer now. I was enlisted with no degree. I have my degree now. I'm an officer making really good money. I can buy whatever I want within reason. But this passion and this itch that I had for business wasn't being fulfilled. So I was like, well, I want to sell things online. So I created a Wix website and I tried contacting someone on Alibaba, not having taken a course. I was selling iPhone 6 phone cases, and my only two customers were my best friend and my mom. And I spent thousands of dollars thinking I knew what I was doing because I had my degree. And very quickly, I realized that having a degree didn't mean anything, and I had to kind of rely back on what I learned in the military, like never giving up, having grit, focusing on systems, being disciplined every day in your routine, asking for help, doing all these things that I had kind of learned throughout my time in the military. And so my job specifically, as it relates to my finger on the button, is as a nuclear missiles officer. Every day I went to work, I would do about a 24-hour shift, and I was responsible for the launch and execution of up to 50 nuclear weapons, nuclear missiles, if ordered to by the President of the United States. And thankfully, I never had to do that. And it's
yes,
actually
we're
not.
all thankful for that.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Thankfully, it's not a button. It's actually a key. It's a set of keys that you turn, and it ends up being a group action. So you can't actually have a bad day and be like, I'm going to go and nuke this country or this.
Right.
There are fail safes in there that prevent someone from being a malicious actor. But what it really did is it really pushed me towards my obsession for entrepreneurship. So in 2015, I knew that at the end of my 5 year commitment, which was 2020, that I wanted to be a digital nomad pursuing online business. I'd given away aspirations to become a private banker or a PE investment banker. I was like, having gone into my master's program online, taking the same classes I took in my undergraduate, like corporate finance, things that used to really light me up and get me excited were no longer exciting to me. What was exciting to me was making a website, getting my hands on a product, being creative on how I problem solve things, like going through that whole life cycle really, really excited me. So I really just tried to dive into different aspects of online business. I started with high ticket drop shipping. Found some success there. Um, Made like, I think my first store did 60 something $1,000 in revenue the first couple of months once I was finally able to get it off the ground.
So this
Um,
is something you're doing while you're still in the Air Force.
yes, yeah, full time. So my schedule was like, at the time the rotations have changed, but I would spend a day and a half above ground on my
Uh-huh.
time off, and then a day and a half underground, either like transporting myself to the missile field and going underground, working a 24-hour shift, coming back above ground and spending that other half day coming back home. So it was a day and a half on, day and a
It
half
took
off.
you literally a half day to get above ground.
Yeah, basically, because you have to
Jeez.
for the crew that's changing over, you have to get. A lot of people think that when you're underground, you're not doing anything, but there's a lot that happens underground. There's a lot that happens, and there's times where I didn't even really get sleep. So it was
Oh, really?
it,
So it's not like you were working on your business while you're underground. You had to
oh
do that
no,
when you're above ground.
no, you can't. Yeah, it's pretty things. You're pretty shut off. You're only really allowed to kind of do the mission, and there are some things you can do to relax, but you're on alert. It's not really a place to run a business in your free time. So I was actively engaged in that, and that
Uh-huh.
day and a half my off time, I would literally come home, go to the gym, eat something as soon as I could, and I would drive to Starbucks and sit there until it closed or until I got super hungry and I couldn't make it work anymore. And I did that for like 4.5 years nonstop, like clockwork. And I went through a lot of emotions during that period. I went through like emotions of complete happiness and joy when I made my first sale. Really, really down times when I hit my first scam customer that I got scammed out of $2,000 crossbow that I had drop shipped. And I got scammed out of that. So I had to pay that before really making money. I
Mm-hmm.
pivoted to Amazon FBA, like was launching products, one failure, launched another one, had a little bit of success, launched another one, which was like a chef knife, and ended up being the number 6 selling chef knife around Christmas time until I stocked out on December 6th because I
Oh,
was,
wow. That's
yeah, it was
that's pretty exciting though to be number
yeah,
6 for chef knife.
yeah, yeah. It was I went from page 3 to page 1, kind of implementing all the things that I had learned over. I think at that point I'd been doing Amazon for 2 years straight, just eat, sleeping, breathing Amazon, consuming as many podcasts as I can, being on every single mastermind I could. I thought to myself, well, we all have our strengths and weaknesses, right? Some people have the strength of time. Some people have the strength of grit, the strength of finances. And so I was like, what do I have? Well, right now I'm a single guy. I'm an officer in the military. I make good money. I don't have a lot of time because I'm underground half the time. And even though I have a day and a half off, I don't really like half the time I'm recovering from the lack of sleep that I didn't
Oh,
get.
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. And as an officer, you still have other duties that you're responsible for other than just being a nuclear missiles officer. You have to do other things as well. So
I'm sure lots of paperwork, administrative tasks, and
exactly, it's just a lot, right? And so I thought to myself, well, if that's the case, I might as well use all this extra money I have and make it work. I'm going to burn the ships. Like the money I was going to spend for my master's, I'm going to put that into real serious
do
education.
you nuke the ships?
I'll burn the ship and nuke the ship. That would have been cool. But instead, I decided just to pour that money towards trying to better myself in every single way, but primarily Amazon. So I just soaked up as much knowledge as I possibly could. Got to the point where I was like, oh, now it finally worked. But then I was losing so much money, like $10,000 masterminds. Those things were expensive back then. The courses weren't $100 like they are now, right? Like they were super expensive to get access to courses. So when I finally was able to start making money with the chef knife that took off and the accessory product that I launched after that and the product I launched after that, it was like this trajectory. And I think we always think like I'm either gonna just do this one product launch and I'm gonna make it and quit my 9 to 5, or oh, I'm going to do this product launch and it's just going to be like pain all the way. And I've seen the journey, one with myself and two with other people I've met in masterminds who are starting out in dropshipping, friends that I met on Facebook groups, and seeing people quit way too early was like such a commonality that I saw. I saw one person who was much smarter than me, um, sourced a better product, got it for cheaper, made better quality content. They were running PPC, extremely efficiency, everything. But they chose a product that eventually got hyper saturated because everyone was following the same product methods back then. And she gave up, and it was too much. It was too much for her, and she gave up. But I know if she did another product, she would have been a millionaire. Like I know it. So I think not giving up it sounds so basic, but it's literally like the most important thing, because like who really hits a home run first run at bat, and very few people actually do. So yeah, that's like my first little bit of thought, I would say.
Well, good point there. So, all right. So, fast forward to today. So, you left the Air Force, you burned or nuked the boats, depending on how you want to phrase that. And then you got to a point where you're like, wasn't necessarily always doing well, but then it got better. Are you still with the business?
Yeah, yeah. So I had, I mean, my very first Amazon product was a shower head, and at the time, I got to page one, position one, like that, and I was making like 5 grand a day in profit. Was it profit? Yeah, it was in profit. 5 grand a day in profit, and I sold out
Profit,
so
not
quick.
just sales.
Yeah, it was profit, because I've been all over the place. Where I launch a product, I spend 10 grand on a product, nothing happens. Right, I spend 2 grand on a product, right? So it's like
Mm.
this trajectory of like, you're doing really good, scam, you're doing really bad, and it was just, and I realized
Mm.
what it really was this kind of like oscillating trajectory forward, and it was not giving up. Eventually hitting, was I was running extremely low on funds, and I decided to get really in depth with product research, like super in depth with it. I ended up making like a pretty intense spreadsheet that took things to the next level, putting everything I knew behind, um, making weighted averages, removing outliers, et cetera, like grabbing different data points from Amazon, from Google, et cetera, and then rack and stacking like 200 opportunities instead of 10, and then scoring them with a final score. And what I did, that I was able to look at really good opportunities that if I had 50 grand, I would have done really, really well, but I didn't have 50 grand. So I kind of moved down my
Mm.
list, and I saw an opportunity for $3,000. So I went after that opportunity. And then when I did that, it worked extremely well. My landed cost per unit was about 44 cents per unit. So I felt really comfortable about not stocking out. So I ordered a bunch of inventory.
Hmm.
I went really, really hard in the paint, you could say, and I just didn't give up. As soon as I became profitable, I didn't let off the gas. I didn't give a profit margin. I didn't do any of that. I just kept going hard PPC, let it roll over. And that's actually when I contacted you the first time, because you were in the space, helping sellers expand to Canada. And I was like, okay, now I got to start planting flags in different
Hmm.
countries and doing that whole thing. So yeah, that's the business life cycle. I ended up selling that specific Amazon brand about a year and a half ago for $638,000. And since then, I have helped other people kind of do the same. I say like start, sell, and scale online businesses. Um, and I've worked at some aggregators. I freelance for some companies. And right now, I'm kind of trying to do a little bit of both. I'm trying to be someone that helps other entrepreneurs, like basically like me, that maybe want more information on how to scale or how to start, while still being someone who's an active practitioner. So I've actually was about to, and this is full transparency, right? Like the
Sure.
Seller Central, like classic story. Like we think that once we hit success, we just hit success and it keeps going. It's like I'm launching a product right now on a new Seller Central account, and the product's suspended. Like it's just suspended. And it's like it happens. And it's like the classic Seller Central stories. But I'm not gonna, I know now, having been in the game for so long, I'm not gonna let it demotivate me. And one of the things that lessons I learned for kind of getting through failed product launches is like to always be launching, always be working on your next product while
Hmm.
you're currently working on one, because something's going to happen. And if you have one in
Sure.
the chamber ready to go, like you're that much more ready to push forward.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So basically, as I understand this, is my quick summary, you were trying a bunch of different things. You were doing pretty well in the Air Force with a promising career, but I'm sure there was some mental bandwidth of maybe the work you were doing, both if you actually did have to turn the key, so to speak, or if you're spending all this time underground. I'm sure just the lack of sun would get to you over
Right.
time.
Yeah, there's some days where you actually don't even see the sun in the middle of the winter, just with how where it's at in North Dakota. There's some days where I didn't see the sun at all.
Oh, so
And
even
that,
when you're above ground, you might not have even seen the sun.
yeah, even when you're above ground, you might not even see it. And that kind of weighs on you, and it really starts to focus in on like, am I following my purpose? And I spent
Mm.
13 years in the military, and I'm very thankful for what I've learned, and my what I've given service to my country, but that country's given to me for education, what it's taught me, all these different things. And apologize, all these different things. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to like, are you following your purpose? And I had to truly ask myself, like, am I on purpose? If Amazon FBA is not your purpose, then don't force it, you know? And like when I really like calmed down and sat with my feelings, I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do e-commerce. I want to build a business on a computer. I love marketing. I love making products. This is what I'm willing to do. How far am I willing to go? And how far am I willing to take it? And once I told myself, internalized that I was okay with getting down to my last dollar after everything I had been through, it kind of like flipped the switch for me, because it was like, I'm all in now. And I think having that all in mindset is super powerful, but also sometimes like somewhat limiting depending on how you say it to yourself. So for me, I said to my last dollar, and I internalized it. Like, I deeply internalized it. And I think I probably could have done that differently, because I started spending money like I was going to do it until my last dollar. And it almost kind of got there at some points. I was like, man, if this fails, like, there goes 40 grand in inventory or 10 grand in inventory. But yeah, I think just, pushing through is super important, and it can't be understated. The one thing I always say is that you're actually one product launch away from changing your life, and it can't be more true than on Amazon.
Yeah. So in Amazon, really what it comes down to is two things: product to sell, people to sell to. Amazon helps you a lot with the people to sell to, and they give you the data to help you figure out what product to sell. And you tried a bunch of different things along the way to get there. But like, how did you decide what would help you figure out what to do with your last dollar, so to speak?
Yeah. I think just getting super focused is like, when you're on your last dollar, it's kind of like that 80-20 rule. Like, what do you focus on that's the most important, that puts everything off to the side, right? Because I had extra money, I was like trying to test different things. I was hiring virtual assistants, part-time, full-time, and while like freelancing on Fiverr, while also like trying to build a Merch by Amazon account to see if I could practice my outsourcing. And when things were getting pretty tough, I kind of pushed all that off to the side, and I'm like, what's going to really move the needle forward? And it's like, where I'm at right now is get really good at product research. So I was like, how can I get really good at product research? Well, I'm going to take everything I know about product research and take it to the next level. I'm going to do a magnitude better. Instead of looking at 10 opportunities and coming up with a list of 10, I'm going to come up with a list of 200. So I came up with a list of 200, but I put a process in place that allowed me to look at products very quickly, and then have my VA either scrape the initial data, massage it for me, so that 200 felt more like 20 or 30 instead of actually 200. So yeah, just kind of focusing on what's most important was very beneficial for me. And that was product research to begin with. And then of course, once you launch, PPC is absolutely critical, and it's more critical now more than ever. And then after that, it's just kind of like, in my opinion, it's choose your own adventure. Which way do you want to scale, and how do you want to scale?
Got it. What were some of the things you did to scale along the way?
Well, I mean, a lot of things I did back then aren't really allowed anymore. I feel like once you change terms of service, that things are no longer allowed. But my very first product, it was like I got 40 of my friends and family to leave a review within 3 days. So for my shower heads, I popped to page 1, position 1. Right. I was doing the craziest super URLs. I was rotating super URLs before any major software company in the Amazon space was rotating super URLs. So I was doing a lot of those things. And I remember when I was doing those things, hearing about other people who were successful at the time saying, oh, I started in Amazon 3-4 years ago, and I was doing this, and this. And it actually brought up these feelings of, man, if I just started back then, I would be further ahead. If I could only have done deep discounts back then, I would have made it now. Why do I have to do super URLs? Why do I have to this and that? And I think it just comes down to, all different ways we can scale, but where I'm at now, and being so afraid of getting my account suspended and banned, because I had issues with that. When I went to sell my original account, I was flagged for a rebate. Or I was flagged for a review. What's it called? Rebate and review.
Review manipulation.
Yeah, review manipulation one time. And when I started the
by Amazon or a potential buyer?
By Amazon. when I did that on that one product that I went to sell, I was not doing rebates and reviews for a solid year. For a solid year. And even when I was doing them, they were only to 40 friends and family from, and that account was super old. But when Amazon sent that message to me, their window was only 1 year. So they must have grabbed like that one review that mattered. And since then, I actually sold my business for about 15% less than what it was actually worth, in my opinion. If by having that hit on my account, thankfully my person bought my business, they bought it all cash. They didn't care. They just saw the asset and wanted to pick it up.
Mm.
But knowing how sensitive I am now to suspensions and reviews, I think it's something that isn't really talked about a lot or enough in the Amazon space. We always just like to say the next coolest trick that we're doing, but the reality is, if you're not really being white hat, building a brand in a sustainable way, these algorithms now are just way too smart and they're not worth it. So yeah, I've done all kinds of interesting things to scale a brand, but I realized what has worked for those brands, for the chef knife, for the product that I sold, for the products that I continue to sell now, and for the people that I help, it really comes down to understanding what the market truly wants. We think the market wants this color or that color or this, but you can really deep dive the data both on and off of Amazon, get super clear about who's the customer avatar, what age are they, what interests do they have, what words do they describe their pain point, their experience. They buy this
Mm.
product. Products would they normally buy? What social media accounts would they follow? What color palettes do they like? How do they talk to their friends and family? Yeah, all these. When do they use the product? Why do they use the product? How often do they use the product? Where do they apply it? All these different things. When someone buys this product, are they just going to Amazon, or do they normally find that person on Pinterest, or are they normally on Twitter, or are they normally here on YouTube? Finding all those different things, compiling all that, and getting super clear about your customer avatar and the demand of the niche, and then pushing that all the way through to your bullets, to your images, to your video, to your A+ content, and getting that 100% right and on par, I think is actually a lot harder than people seem. And I think it's done incorrectly most of the times. But if you do it right, everything just seems to work. PPC just seems to work magically all of a sudden. Influencer campaigns seem to work and convert a lot better, because something, when you drive that warm traffic to that lead, it just makes sense. Everything is just clicking off in their head. And so I think that is what ultimately really works and has allowed me to be where I'm at now.
Yeah, so it's such a good point. I want to go back and highlight what you said about the, gray hat, black hat tactics. I mean, the safest way to keep your account safe on Amazon and not be suspended is just not even sell. That's the only way to guarantee it, because the terms of service is so vague. With that said, there's things you kind of like the past the New York Times test, as people have called it over time, of like, would you like what you're doing to be reported on in the New York Times? Now, today's world, instead of the front page of the New York Times, it might be shared on social media by a big influencer or something. Like, you want someone to share what it is you're doing to Amazon, or you going by, and I've heard this phrase by people, and this is a very dangerous phrase, of quote, they'll never know.
Yeah.
That's wrong. They will always know, because they can look at anomalies, and as you probably know, there's ways of doing statistics to figure out, like, this is a few standard deviations off of how behavior normally is. Something might be worth looking into, and they can, if what you're doing is based on somebody just changing the way they, the filters they use for reports, and all of a sudden you're on it. Do you want to be doing that? Because also, one of the things I've always kind of looked at is, is this in Amazon's best interest? Amazon's best interest is in best interest for the customer. It's, if I've been kind of following along things in the digital marketing space since before I ever got into this. And when I first started like listening to podcasts, everybody was talking about Penguin and Panda, which was this Google update where all of a sudden they just, changed. People's businesses were based on Google at the time, and getting, links. And it was all this kind of like, nothing illegal, nothing like it would totally make your head scratch, but it was like not in the best interest of what Google is trying to do for its users, of people trying to drive SEO traffic, basically. Mm-hmm. And on Amazon, sometimes if it's like, is this working with their algorithm and their goals, or is this trying to circumvent it or go around it or find, you know, too much of a, you know, like you'd be almost nervous to even talk to them about what it is you're doing. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah. 100%. And I think, a lot of us in the space in the last year or two, we've gone significantly more white hat. And one thing I realized just being around new sellers or kind of experienced sellers, like at WeWork or just wherever I am, this narrative and this story is out there like, hey, it's actually not worth it anymore. And then I see people go and be like, oh yeah, but I found this one company that says they're really good and they can't be tracked. And I think it's really important for people to realize, like,
Yeah. Or they say, oh, but it's still within Amazon's terms of service. Sure it is.
yeah, and then just write that down, so therefore it's okay.
Right. They said it, so it must be true.
Yeah, well, they're not going to hold your Amazon account liable for it. They're not. No one's really going to care.
Right, exactly. How deep is their guarantee?
Exactly. And it never extends all the way to them paying you money at the end of the day. And I
Mhm.
think ultimately what ends up happening is what you want to do is you want to build a business sustainably, because the moment you do something like when I was doing all the rebates and reviews, people were still doing heavily discounted. They were still doing drop your thing down 90% and then inch up. And I was doing rebate and reviews. Then I was like, okay, this is going to close very soon. So let me stop for a solid year. And I still got hit. But what also really stressed me out was wondering when I would be hit, because what happens before every Prime Day, but specifically every single Q4, Amazon will update their algorithm and they'll scrape their entire system again. You'll update your image or your A+ content, and then your Amazon account will go through checks and balances that it never did before.
Mm-hmm.
And because you thought it was fine and you were fine for 6 months, 8 months, a year, all of a sudden it's not, and it's Q4 and you miss out on things. That kind of stuff can really just damage your business. So I think moving forward, it's just that risk reward ratio is just not there anymore. If you want to do anything kind of black hat or gray hat, I would say do those things off of Amazon and do them on platforms that aren't your primary revenue or your primary driver of revenue. But those platforms are catching up too. They're getting faster and faster.
I mean, the way I look at it is the amount of time and creativity people sometimes use on the latest quote unquote hacks. If you just look at like evergreen strategies of, are you offering a product that people want more than the money is worth in their pocket? So if your product serves a purpose to someone that's worth more valuable to them than the $20 in their pocket, and you're selling it for $20, then because there's maybe $30 of value to them, then you're on the right page. And if you kind of focus on that, and I think you're always going to be ahead of the game, because, I remember when I first got into the game in 2015, I really started following things, kind of dabbled in retail arbitrage. So as we're recording this, it was almost 7 years ago, I got my first sale. And then the following kind of like early 2016, I launched a private label product. And at the time, everybody was doing this thing where you reach out to top 10,000 reviewers, and you would send them a free product. And this was all white hat at the time. But after a while, it kind of got to be like it would feel a little ick of like, I'd reach out to these people and I'd say, hey, I have this widget. Would you like to do a review? And there was no like, there was no like, hey, give me a 5-star or whatever. It was just, hey, would you like, a free product in exchange for a review? And that at the time was okay, as long as they made some mention of that in their review. But then what happened is a few months later, I think it was TechCrunch did a article where they did an analysis of like, let's say they looked at like a couple thousand reviews that didn't have any sort of language hinting at the person got a free review or free products in exchange for review. And then they looked at other ones where there was that language and it was a much higher rating. It wasn't all 5 stars, but maybe it was like 4.7 versus like 4.2. And so it was kind of like what they were getting at was like, is this trustworthy? And when you look at Amazon, what they want to be is trustworthy to the customers. And at the end of the day, we want that too, because if people don't trust the Amazon platform, they're not buying, then we're just spinning our wheels, because, Amazon has to preserve the platform and we want them to too.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things that won't go away. And review manipulation is just ultimately it's not worth it. There's very few
Nope.
things we can do now on Amazon to kind of get a higher review rate. But the reality is, in my opinion, if you just kind of stick to the always be launching, are you, like you said, are you offering a product that people want to say yes to? Are you coming into the market to
Exactly.
dominate it? And if that's not the case, skip to the next product and find another product to source. If you have a product right now where you actually look at it and you're like, hey, this isn't, it doesn't meet that criteria, well, let it
Mhm.
go, liquidate that inventory and move on to the next product. Try to always have one or two in the chamber where like, okay, I don't have money for this next product, but I may have a couple of $1,000, 4 6 months, whatever it is from now. I can't launch this other product now, but I can at least get clear about the product requirements. I can at least start testing suppliers, contacting suppliers, testing
Mhm.
samples, etc., to get ready for that next launch. Because once you decide to shut down that product or something happens, having another thing moving is what
Mm.
kept me moving, to be honest. Because when you have that one product fail, it's such a hit to everything you're doing, all the time you
Mhm.
invest. Family doesn't understand, friends don't understand,
Right.
understand is your wallet and you at the end of the day. So having something ready, I think, is just is super important.
Exactly. Exactly. So, all right. So, on that note, if somebody was to come to you and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about either adding to my portfolio of products, or maybe they're just starting out or whatever," what would you say to someone who's looking to pick either a first product or a next product? What would be some advice you might give them?
Yeah, one of the things I teach is, and it's so basic, and it's something I realized, having been in the e-commerce Amazon space again, like in 2015 as well, having taken so many courses and launched so many products. We're always looking for go light, go heavy, go mid, go whatever, go this ROI, go this profit margin, um, do something you're passionate about, all these different things.
Mhm.
And what I come to internalize and what I care most about, the product that I eventually sold, I wasn't the user at all. I didn't even have the accessory product. I was nowhere. It didn't meet any of those criteria. It didn't meet any of the common criteria. But what it did meet is that I had strong differentiation. And it sounds like such a basic answer that people
Mm.
don't like hearing. But the stronger your differentiation in the market, not are you pink and everybody wants blue. I'm talking about
Mm.
compelling offer. Is your differentiation strong enough so that you can justify being on page one, position one at a lower price or at the prices at everyone else's? And there's so many different ways to differentiate. And I remember when I first heard that as well, I was like, well, I can't differentiate with a patent, and color is just one way, but there are a ton of ways to differentiate. And one of the things that I teach, and I think it's really fun to do, is go into your Walmart, go into your Target, and if you ever have free time or you listen to like get excited, like do something that gets you excited. And then what I do is I've walked down every single aisle of Walmart, Target, and a little bit of Home Depot, some of these big chain stores,
Mhm.
and look at every single product and you ask yourself, what is this product doing that this other product isn't doing to be different? And I promise you, if you do that, you spend a few
Mm.
hours doing that. By the time you finish Walmart, Target, and a few other places, you have gone through home and kitchen, outdoor garden, tech, everything, and you will have mastered, in my opinion, differentiation. So the next time you look at a product and you think this won't work, you'll actually find ways in which it will, and that differentiation muscle will get stronger and stronger, and you'll use that and that knowledge to source your next product. And it's kind of an answer that most people don't like hearing, but I think it's just so critical and so important. If you do that, the next product you'll look at, you'll be like, oh, I can definitely do that by doing this. And that's kind of how I did my product. My product that I ended up selling, the average number of reviews was 2,000 reviews in the niche when I got into it. But when I looked at it, I saw that I could differentiate it, and to be honest, I only did that when I had gone through all those different stores, and I was like, actually, I can magnetize it when other people aren't magnetizing. That's one way you can
Mm.
differentiate. There's all these random ways that people just forget about until you go through and you just really start to train that muscle.
Well, and that's a good point too, is that, oftentimes, people are looking at Jungle Scout or Helium 10 or whatever, and just looking at the data and comparing products. But like, you could go to a store that sells those type of products, whether it be Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, Walmart, whatever. Those are good places to start. Bed Bath and Beyond, whatever is selling that niche of products, pick them up. Like, I'm holding a calculator just because it happens to be on my desk in front of me. like what is different about this Staples brand calculator versus the maybe more premium calculator? Like, is it the buttons are different? Does it have different functionality? Is the display different? Um, does one have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, or which I
Yeah.
don't know that a calculator would have that, but like those are the type of things you start looking for. And I think inherently people know like certain things might meet their needs or whatever. So when you start finding these differentiating factors, how do you decide which differentiating factors actually matters?
Yeah. So what I do is I actually have a list. I'm just building a list since 2015. Every time I find a point of differentiation,
Hmm.
I add to my list. So I actually look at that list, and then I just try and do a little bit of customer research, right? And that comes down to, again, knowing your customer. But the great thing is when you go through all these different segments and you look at from the marketing perspective and the physical product perspective, you'll see how people market in a different way. You'll be like, oh, this is actually slightly off brand. I could market it this way, right? Looking at the packaging teaches you things about, the legal statements. If they got to Walmart, they're 100% compliant. So if they have a warning sticker, what does that mean, right?
Hmm.
Is it inherently dangerous? Should I talk about that in my product listing, right?
Hmm.
And be surprised how much gold you get looking at big box retail packaging, and then using that as a starting point to get into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So just it's really that repetition that helps you get there.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And there was a book, it's a few years old, about like the creative secrets of Steve Jobs. Could be butchering the name of it, but it was something I listened to a few months ago. One of the things they talked about was like how he would get creative ideas from other, and this is one of the things they recommended you do, is get creative ideas from outside of your industry. And like I think most people that kind of have heard his story have heard about how he took like a class on calligraphy in
Right.
college, and how that affected like the just general look and feel of Apple products from the beginning. But like, going back to, I had a calculator on my desk, and that this is people probably heard that there, the a measuring tape. So for those listening, I've got a measuring tape, but maybe, the fact that I've got another measuring tape somewhere else, that this one grips differently. And, maybe you might get some ideas of how this measuring tape is differentiated from other measuring tapes, and you might apply that to calculator. Is that kind of what you're saying with like, just you start finding little different points of differentiation, and you could use those as creative ideas for something completely different?
Yes, 100%. And that applies at the product sourcing level. And I think it applies at a broader level as marketers and entrepreneurs in general. So one of the things, and because I felt like my strength, or one thing that made me different, is I was a single guy making good money. So I had a lot of disposable income, and I lived super cheap. The place I was staying in, my rent was $500 a month.
Oh
It
well.
was the cheapest place ever. If I was with my friends, it would have been like, $1,500, $1,800 a month rent in a nice place. I was like, no, I know where I want to go. I know where I want to be. I want to
Mm.
spend this capital on other things. So I actually look for that pieces of information, sharpening my skill sets beyond just Amazon FBA. So I started trying to build audiences in the pet niche or in another category. Started trying to learn, there's at the time there's only so much Amazon content I could consume. There was only a few really strong big players and courses in the space. So
Now there's
after
no
my
shortage.
yeah, it's like I need to feed this addiction. So I have to go and look in other places and then try and have my
Mm.
virtual assistant learn them. So I think, yes, applying that repetition at the product sourcing level and then beyond and scaling it to your business helps you come up with those creative ideas that are more white hat. Or, I think one of the big narratives in the space now is how powerful Pinterest is. But Pinterest has been powerful for years.
Right.
It's been a powerhouse for years. And there's all these other random things that you can learn about and kind of craft off to the side that will also apply at that higher level. Um, just I think for me, it's just like a deep seated passion and this willingness to want to get there. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this was an interesting conversation. So any closing advice for folks?
Oh, closing advice. I would say that, like, for those who haven't made it yet, I mean, I said it before that you really are one product launch away from changing your life.
Hmm.
But even throughout that entire process, it's so important to take care of yourself first. And by take care of yourself first, I mean, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Are you motivated, or do you feel extremely pressured? When you go to bed at night, are you super anxious that you haven't gotten the day? Are you watching your bank account like kind of like dive down? Like do whatever you can to take care of yourself. Do whatever you can to stay connected to the people you love. Even though you may not understand what you're going through, the entrepreneurship journey, all these different things. If you don't quit and you take care of yourself, you give yourself the opportunity to launch that next product and to do it in a way in which you enjoy the process and you actually find that product instead of finding it in the most anxious and aggressive way, in which in my opinion, that doesn't really work, and it didn't work for me. So that would be my biggest piece of advice for everyone going forward. And then if for anyone who's currently making it or making some money and they're finally like starting to turn money over and they're feeling really good, the next piece of advice I would say is go hard now. Don't let off the gas. Try to leave as much as you can in your business, and if you can, launch another product or expand on that product, because you never know when that may go down, or this is the time to take market share for that big exit.
Awesome. This is a good conversation. So for folks who would like to learn more from you or follow you, where would they go?
Yeah, you can find me at reggieyoung.com, REGGIE Young, like opposite of old. So reggieyoung.com/free. And in there, I have resources that help you start, scale, and sell your online business. I talk a little bit about everything from each points that I've talked about: product research to scaling to exiting your business. And I provide some free resources for everyone at each one of those points as well. So reggieyoung.com/free if you're interested.
Well, definitely recommend folks go check that out. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it'll be in the description down below. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, this will be in the show notes. So definitely go check out reggieyoung.com/free. So thanks for coming on, Reggie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.
Bye.